At 58, Nicole Kidman has finally come clean about the real story behind her divorce from Keith Urban, and honestly, it's not what anyone saw coming. For almost 20 years, they were the ultimate Hollywood power couple, flawless red carpets, public displays of love, and a family that looked built on trust and loyalty. To the outside world, their relationship felt like that rare fairy tale that actually made it. But off camera, the issues ran way deeper than people realized, and Nicole's recent words spill a painful truth, one that completely changes how their marriage is viewed. This isn't your typical celebrity split. It's a story about sacrifice, strength, and the moment Nicole realized that love alone just wasn't cutting it anymore. According to People, one major turning point happened when Keith Urban moved into his own place. A move that represented a distance much bigger than geography. Before we get into this emotional rollercoaster, hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss the biggest Hollywood tea. Now, let's break down why Nicole finally chose to walk away. The Hollywood fairy tale beginning. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's love story kicked off like a straight-up rom-com, but this wasn't scripted, this was real life. Back in January 2005, destiny threw them together at the G'day USA Gala in Los Angeles, a night celebrating Australian talent overseas. Nicole was already an Oscar-winning actress with global fame, while Keith was climbing fast toward the top of the country music scene. They met that night, and Nicole later admitted she felt an instant spark. But plot twist, Keith didn't call her for months. Nicole later confessed she wondered if he just wasn't into her, even though she'd already caught feelings. Then came the moment that flipped everything. On her birthday in 2005, at 5 in the morning, Nicole opened the door of her New York apartment to see Keith standing there with a bouquet of gardenias. Simple move, big impact. Nicole said from that second on, she was totally a goner. Things moved fast after that. Within a year, Keith popped the question, and on June 25, 2006, they tied the knot in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney, blending Hollywood glam with their Aussie roots. The photos showed pure love, and people really believed they'd found something rare, forever. But while the wedding glow was strong, life was already lining up challenges. Just months after saying "I do," Keith checked into rehab to face long-standing addiction struggles. Nicole stood firmly by his side, showing her loyalty early on. That fairy tale beginning. It already had cracks, early signs of tougher battles ahead. Building family and careers. For Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, marriage wasn't just about romance, it was about building a home full of love, kids, and stability. When they married in 2006, Nicole was already mom to Isabella and Connor, her adopted children with Tom Cruise. Bringing Keith into her life also meant expanding the family she'd always wanted to protect. In 2008, they welcomed their daughter Sunday Rose, and in 2010, their second daughter Faith Margaret was born. With 4 kids total, their home life was busy, complicated, and packed with responsibility. Nicole often said motherhood was her grounding force, the thing that kept her steady while Hollywood stayed chaotic. Keith shared those feelings too, both in interviews and through his music, which often dropped subtle shout-outs to Nicole and their daughters. Fans could sense the real love behind the fame. But while their family grew, their careers were also going absolutely wild. Nicole took on some of the most demanding roles of her career. From Rabbit Hole, which earned her another Oscar nomination, to Big Little Lies, which scored her Emmy and Golden Globe wins, she proved she wasn't just a movie star, she was a straight-up force. Keith was also killing it, dominating country music with hit albums, massive tours, and multiple Grammy and CMA awards. He even became a familiar face on TV as a judge on American Idol, winning people over with his charm and honesty. But success came with a cost. Nicole spent months filming overseas, while Keith was constantly on tour. They tried hard to protect family time, video calls, long flights for short reunions, but the distance never fully went away. And in Hollywood, even small shadows eventually become impossible to ignore. The shadow of separation. To the public, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban still looked solid. Their red carpet moments were full of love, quiet whispers, sweet looks, and affection caught by cameras. Nicole openly called Keith her deep, deep love, and Keith returned the energy with emotional speeches and songs inspired by her. For years, they looked like the definition of a balanced Hollywood romance, glam but real. Behind the scenes, though, the cracks were spreading. Two massive global careers made being together harder and harder. Nicole's work took her abroad for long stretches, while Keith's tours covered the world. At first, they brushed it off, saying family always came first. But slowly, time apart started outweighing time together. People started noticing. Fans who were used to their emotional anniversary posts saw them get shorter, less personal, and eventually disappear. During one live radio interview, Keith suddenly cut things off when asked about Nicole, leaving listeners uneasy and rumors flying. Even on stage, where Keith used to weave their love story into his music, signs of distance crept in. Nicole, who had always been his biggest supporter through everything, appeared quieter and more guarded. For a couple that once shared their bond so openly, the silence said everything. On the surface, award shows still showed flashes of the perfect couple, but privately, the emotional gap had grown too wide to hide. Nicole was left questioning whether the marriage that had survived addiction, fame, and separation could survive a deeper, more painful fracture, the absence of connection itself. Like that real kind of disconnect that hits different. Breaking point, updated. By the summer of 2025, the whispers of distance between Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban became a reality too heavy to ignore. What people had been low-key talking about was suddenly real. Reports confirmed that Keith had quietly moved into his own residence, leaving Nicole and their daughters in the family home. To outsiders, it might have looked like another period of career-driven separation, Keith on tour, Nicole on set, but those closest to them knew it was something more deliberate. This wasn't just time apart, it was a step away from the marriage itself, straight up. Nicole, still deeply committed to salvaging what they had built, leaned harder into family. She doubled down, reaching for the intimacy and stability that had defined their happiest years. Friends close to her later described how she believed the bond they had once relied on could weather yet another storm, no matter how messy it got. But instead of reciprocity, her efforts were met with distance. Keith, according to media coverage, was already shaping a new reality, one that didn't revolve around the marriage anymore. The symbolism of his move was devastating. For Nicole, it wasn't simply about living separately, it was about what that choice represented. Nearly 20 years of shared history, sacrifices, and triumphs were no longer enough to hold them together. That realization hit hard. She began to see that love, as powerful as it had been, could not heal a partnership when trust and unity had already eroded. Sometimes love just isn't enough, and that truth hurts. The final blow came on September 30th, 2025, when Nicole filed for divorce after 19 years of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. As Reuters reported, the split had truly begun in early summer when Keith moved out of the family home, marking the start of the end. No coming back from that. Legal landscape. When Nicole Kidman filed for divorce on September 30th, 2025, the legal documents used the familiar phrase, irreconcilable differences. It's the same wording that appears in countless Hollywood separations, chosen for its simplicity and privacy. Clean, vague, and very Hollywood. But behind those two words was nearly 2 decades of battles, triumphs, and fractures that had finally become impossible to ignore. At the heart of the divorce was custody of their daughters, Sunday, 17, and Faith, 14. Nicole, who had long been the primary caregiver, will continue to have the majority of parenting time, while Keith's schedule allows for far fewer days together. According to People, Court filings outlined the split as roughly 306 days with Nicole and 59 with Keith, reflecting the family balance they had lived for years. That part wasn't shocking to anyone close to them. Financially, both stood independently strong. Each enjoyed extraordinary success, Nicole with her award-winning roles, Keith with his sold-out tours and Grammy wins. Their decision to forego spousal support underscored that independence, skipping the messy money drama that usually blows up celebrity divorces. No cash wars here. Property division added another layer. With homes in Nashville, Sydney, Beverly Hills, and New York, residences that once symbolized shared dreams became assets to divide. Negotiations remain ongoing, but the direction is clear. Their lives, once intertwined at every level, are now being separated piece by piece. Brick by brick. The legal filings drew the map of their new reality. But paper and numbers could never capture the deeper truth Nicole would later admit, the truth about why she had finally chosen to walk away. Quick pause, if you're enjoying this breakdown, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the latest Hollywood updates. Now, back to the story. Nicole's painful admission. In the weeks following her divorce filing, Nicole Kidman began to peel back the curtain on what had really gone wrong. For years, the world saw only the polished version of her marriage, the hand-holding at premieres, the shared smiles on stage, and the interviews where she called Keith her deep love. The whole picture-perfect vibe. But behind that image, Nicole admitted, there were fractures too deep to ignore. One of her most striking revelations was the sense of betrayal she felt, not from one single act, but from how choices were made without her. According to friends close to her, Nicole was blindsided when Keith moved out. Completely caught off guard. The decision symbolized more than separation. It shattered the trust and communication that had held their relationship together for nearly 20 years. In her words, the heartbreak wasn't just about living apart, it was about feeling abandoned in the partnership itself. That hurt ran deep. Nicole also gave weight to the phrase irreconcilable differences in a way the legal papers never could. To her, those differences were not abstract. They touched on the essentials of any lasting marriage: respect, emotional support, and safety. The basics. Love, she acknowledged, could not survive without these foundations. For a woman who had stood by Keith through addiction battles and relentless public scrutiny, that realization was both painful and oddly freeing. At 58, Nicole explained that her maturity gave her the courage to speak truths she might have once kept private. She no longer felt compelled to maintain appearances for the sake of Hollywood perfection or public approval. Instead, she prioritized her own well-being and the stability of her daughters. Her honesty reframed the narrative, not as a failed marriage, but as a woman choosing authenticity over facade. Nicole's admission wasn't bitter or accusatory. It was clear, grounded, and deeply human. No shade, just truth. And for many, that honesty was more shocking than the divorce itself. Self-reflection. Nicole Kidman's honesty about her divorce didn't stop at pointing to unmet needs or broken trust. What stood out just as much was her willingness to acknowledge her own role in the unraveling of her marriage. In private conversations later reported by those close to her, she admitted that no relationship exists in a vacuum. Both partners inevitably shape its strengths and its cracks. It's never just one person. For Nicole, reflecting on her own choices wasn't about blame, but about clarity. She spoke of moments when her career demands may have pulled her too far away from home, or when she leaned so heavily on her sense of loyalty that she overlooked her own emotional needs. In hindsight, she recognized that sacrificing her voice in order to maintain peace only delayed the inevitable. That silence, she admitted, created space for resentment and disconnection to grow. Slowly, then all at once. What resonated most in her self-reflection was the lesson she drew from it, that marriages don't thrive on perfection or appearances. They thrive on mutual recognition, respect, and the willingness to communicate even when the truth is uncomfortable. For Nicole, the hardest realization was that she had sometimes minimized her own feelings, convincing herself that love alone would be enough to keep their bond strong. Over time, she realized that even real, deep love can fade if there's no openness or give and take. Her reflection also came with a sense of empowerment. At this point in her life, Nicole made it clear that she values honesty, boundaries, and self-respect way more than chasing the illusion of a perfect marriage. Divorce, she said, isn't the end of her story, it's a move toward being real. By choosing truth over a front, she reshaped her narrative, not as a woman broken by heartbreak, but as someone willing to grow, learn, and level up, even after almost 2 decades together. What's next for Nicole? For Nicole Kidman, signing those divorce papers wasn't the finale, it was the start of a brand new chapter. At 58, she's standing at a crossroads, but she's also standing strong. Family is still her rock, and people close to her say she's leaned hard on her sister Antonia, her longtime go-to during rough times. More than anything, Nicole is locked in on her daughters, Sunday and Faith. Right now, her main focus is making sure they feel loved and steady, even as their family dynamic shifts. On the career side, Nicole's future could be just as compelling. With decades of awards already under her belt, she's got nothing left to prove. Instead, insiders say she may start picking projects that hit closer to home, roles centered on resilience, change, and realness. Just like Big Little Lies tapped into her strength for playing complex, vulnerable characters, her next roles could mirror the truths she's recently opened up about in her own life. For fans, that likely means performances that hit even deeper. There's also buzz about whether Nicole might eventually open up more about her marriage in an interview. If she does, it probably won't feel like gossip, it'll have substance. She's long been respected for her grace and honesty, and hearing her story straight from her could further reshape her public image, not as some untouchable icon, but as a woman who chose truth over perfection. Outside of work and family, this chapter of her life might also bring unexpected freedom. Divorce, especially later in life, often sparks reinvention. For Nicole, that could mean firmer boundaries, deeper connections, or even totally new creative paths. Whatever she chooses, one thing's obvious: she refuses to be defined by loss, choosing instead to move forward on her own terms. Keith's uncertain path. While Nicole Kidman has stepped into this new phase with openness and reflection, Keith Urban's road ahead feels a lot less clear. Known for pouring his feelings into music instead of interviews, Keith has stayed mostly quiet about the divorce. That silence has fans guessing how he's dealing with the end of a marriage that shaped so much of both his public and private life. Professionally, Keith is still killing it. His tours sell out, his albums keep topping charts, and his status as a country music heavyweight isn't going anywhere. Still, some fans have picked up on subtle changes during his performances. Songs that once felt playful and full of love for Nicole now sound heavier, more introspective. On purpose or not, audiences can feel that something's shifted. On a personal level, Keith faces some tough adjustments. With custody arrangements giving him fewer days with his daughters, his role as a dad now takes extra planning. For someone who's often said family keeps him grounded, that reduced time could hit hard. People wonder how he'll juggle a global career while staying present for Sunday and Faith. There's also ongoing concern around his sobriety. Keith has been open about his past struggles with addiction and how much Nicole supported him through it. Without her beside him, fans can't help but wonder how he'll keep navigating that journey. There's no sign of relapse, but the concern shows just how connected his personal life has always been to his success. For now, Keith's future feels quieter than Nicole's. While she's redefining herself out loud, he seems to be processing everything in silence. And in that contrast, the world sees two different ways of dealing with the same ending, one through words, the other through music. The final word. Nicole Kidman's admission at 58 is a reminder that even the most picture-perfect marriages can hide real pain. For nearly 20 years, she and Keith Urban looked like Hollywood's rare fairy tale, surviving addiction, fame, and long distances. But in the end, Nicole chose being real over keeping up appearances, saying respect and trust matter more than the image. Her story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about courage, resilience, and finally speaking her truth after years of holding back. Keith, meanwhile, continues his journey more quietly, letting his music speak for the emotions he hasn't put into words. Their paths now move separately, but together they leave behind a powerful reminder: love can't last without honesty and connection. What do you think? Was their split unavoidable, or could love have saved them? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the latest Hollywood stories that show what really goes on behind the spotlight.